That's not wood turning, Daddy.
Hello folks, in this video we're going to be making a glossy wooden sign like this using an inkjet printer. This is Bella, one of our bearded dragons. Say hello, Bella. Oh well.
My videos are designed to give viewers creative ideas. The way I work is not necessarily the best or safest way to work. Your safety is your own responsibility, not mine. Please follow all safety procedures, wear personal protective equipment, wear a visor and a respirator gas mask at all times. Be safe, be creative and enjoy your turn.
This is the special sheet we're going to use in the inkjet printer. It's an acetate sheet and it's specially done so it takes inkjet ink. One side is glossy and smooth, the other side has got a coating on. It's got a slight texture to it which absorbs the ink so that it'll take the print. But I just buy this from the local stationers and it's very inexpensive, and I just buy it per sheet, but you can buy it online. You can get multiple packs of it. There we go. Next we need a design. We're going to have a Maker's Central theme to this project. The majority of the video editing and photo editing and everything I do on my iPad. I'd be lost without my iPad. Anyway, I'll show you the design we're going to print. There we go. Maker's Central, and it's on A4 size. So we're going to, because the acetate sheets are A4. Now, before we can print it, because we're turning the paper over in effect to print, I want the smooth side up. We need to reverse that, which I have done. So there we go. That's what we're going to print. Before I waste an acetate sheet, I'm going to print it onto some plain paper. Let's see if AirPrint's working. Black and white. There we go. Looking hopeful. There we go. Perfect. So we shall now load an acetate sheet in. Got to make sure in this printer I've got to put it in upside down. Got to make sure it's going to print on the rough side of the paper. And there we have it, all printed. Got to let that really dry now before we do anything with it. Here I'm mixing up some of my favourite epoxy resin. This is West Systems G-Flex epoxy resin. It's a slow set epoxy, very, very strong and very durable. I'm mixing it thoroughly using a little mixing pot, and then I pour out a pool of it in the middle of the wood that I want to put my design on. Then I put the acetate sheet onto the wood, just got the blob in the middle, and now I'm squeegeeing it out each side, trying to hold the acetate strip still as I do it, and I'm using a piece of paper just to stop scratching on the sheet. This takes quite a bit of time, and as you spread it out it dissipates the bubbles and things, and it gives a lovely appearance. It's the next day and the resin is set. You can see there. It looks really cool just like this. And what I did with the last sign was I left the acetate there as the finish. I don't know how durable that will be long term, but it gives a really nice result. You know, it's a lovely glossy finish, and it'll certainly be alright for indoor use. But I stumbled across something while I was making these, and that is, I'll show you on this one first. This is another one I did with my logo on. I stumbled across this. If you're gentle, you can peel this off. and it leaves that. Now you can't leave it like that because it's not tough enough, the surface isn't. Where the printing is, it would run, it's not waterproof. So you've got two options. You could lacquer this, but I've got another option, which I shall show you in just a bit. This does not work if you've got broad areas of colour or black. It will peel off. It only works with narrow lettering and things. This is probably about the limit. It's come out pretty well. It should look good once I've done the next stage. But this Maker Central one, because as we know, Maker Central is coming soon. That's I messed up a little bit because I didn't allow enough spacing between the designs. It's going to make it difficult cutting it out. And let's peel the backing off that one too. That one didn't work so well. As you can see, some of the black has pulled away. It's not a disaster because I can paint that in with some acrylic paint. It just is a bit of a faff. In areas you'll find that some of the black will lift up a little bit and bubble up where you peel the backing off. To get it to stick down again, I found the best way is to use a sheet of non-stick baking parchment, just a domestic iron on a medium heat. Just run that across, and that seems to stick it all back down onto the resin. I thought, light bulb. So I made another, and I put a cutting line in this one as well, just to help me cut it out eventually. And I figured if I ironed it first before peeling the backing off, that would help it stick. But I was wrong. It was worse. I was not happy. Anyway, I did another one with lots of small logos, and that one did work. And I'm going to use this to make some fridge magnets and things. Then I had another idea. I took one of the acetate sheets with my logos on and I cut them out. And I'll show you a bit more about this later in the video. I'm going to be coating these signs in a specialist resin. So I need to contain the resin, so I'm making a housing or mould or shuttering, if you like to call it, out of some plywood strips using hot glue, because this seals it and holds it very nicely. I'm just putting an edge all the way around to contain the resin. This is the resin. It's Polycraft Cleartop 5 epoxy resin, and it's by MB Fiberglass, who are based in Belfast, Northern Ireland. With all resin work, it is very important to follow the directions given and measure the quantities accurately. With this one, I use postage scales to get the weights exactly right, and you have to mix it in a 2:1 ratio, resin to hardener by weight. So I'm measuring out the resin first and then adding the hardener, keeping an eye on the weights the whole time. These postage scales are brilliant for this, they're very accurate. And then it's a case of mixing it. You have to mix it thoroughly, but try not to incorporate too much air into it as you do it. Using just a beach stirring rod here. Then it's pouring it into the moulds. I made sure the resin was warm before I mixed it. We're in a warm room, the surface is level, and I've got rid of all the dust. I'm just gently pouring it into the moulds, maximum depth of 5mm. The resin pours really well, and it degasses itself really well, leaving no bubbles. It looks amazing. I then cover these to stop any dust landing on them, because you need to leave them to set for 24 hours. I mixed up some more of the resin because I wanted to try some different things. So here I am putting a base layer in, a couple of them, putting a peacock's feather on top of the base layer and putting the acetate discs that I'd cut out onto this base layer, so they're just held above the wood. They're just floating on the surface. I really carefully place them, trying not to trap any air under them. It's quite tricky, but it was alright. I then pour some more resin over the top so that they're kind of sandwiched in the middle of the resin. And I also covered the peacock feather with a bit more resin. I've allowed 24 hours for the resin to set fully. In that time I kept them covered to keep dust off the surface. But here's the Maker's Central one. It looks amazing. It's absolutely incredible sheen on that. Really nice depth to it. I'm going to I was hoping to cut them out circular, but I've got them too close to each other, so they're going to have to be sort of an elliptical shape when I cut them out. Remains to see how well I can cut them out and sand the edges, but we'll cross that when we come to it. But looking really good so far. Really impressed with this resin. Really impressed. This was the logo one I did. That's come out well. Pleased with that. I did this one, which I'm going to make some little fridge magnets out of, I think, which was lots of logos. They're going to take some careful cutting out. So on very thin plywood this, and I think rather than using the bandsaw, I'll probably use my scroll saw, but we'll see. This is my favourite one, and this was the one where I set the acetate sheets in the resin as it, in one go, in one step. So in actual fact it was the easiest one to do, and it gives us the nicest result. What I did was I put a layer of the resin in first and then gently laid the acetate sheet on top so I didn't trap air underneath. And once I'd done that, I then poured more resin on the tops of these so they're actually in the middle of the resin. So it gives almost a 3D effect. They're sitting just proud of the wood. I don't know if you can see that, the 3D effect, I'm not sure, but it's really cool. The acetate just disappears into the resin, it becomes invisible. So that's the answer. That's the way to do it, like this. I've got to see how they turn out when I cut them out. I think I'd be inclined to leave a margin around each one so that you've got resin against resin around the edges and you've not formed just a sandwich with the acetate, because I think that could separate with time. I think if I leave a margin of solid resin around the edge, it'll produce a stronger result. There's the peacock feather. It looks pretty cool. It's lost some of its brilliance, shall we say. In certain lights it still looks amazing. It's floated to the surface fractionally in places. I don't know if you can see that. So what I will probably do is put another layer of resin on top of that next time I mix some. A Maker's Central one I managed to rescue from the one that went badly wrong. But like I say, if I was to do that again, I would use a technique where I just cut out the acetate and laid it onto the resin as I poured the resin. Another way of doing it would be to pour one layer and let that almost set up before putting your acetate down on top of it, perhaps with a bead of fresh resin underneath, a bubble of fresh resin, so that you make sure you don't trap any air. Put that down and then pour the next layer of resin on the top. That would be the best way of doing it. You would get a beautiful 3D effect. and it would keep it all even. So that's probably what I'll do next time. I will have to try and make a better Maker's Central one, because it was a bit of a failure, that big one I wanted to do. It's a shame, because what I've done with this one is I put an extra circle around the logo, which would form a cutout line. So when you're cutting these out on the bandsaw or the scroll saw, you've got a line to work to without having to mark the surface or anything. It's then out into the workshop and onto the bandsaw, and I'm just roughly cutting out the shapes, being careful using push sticks when I'm getting close to the blade. Then over to the sanding machine, where I finish profiling the edge and sanding the edge to quite a fine finish, just using a bit of rubber there just to clean the sanding disc occasionally, because it can clog and burn quite easily when sanding resin. Well, I'm in from the garage and it's freezing cold out there. I've been cutting out the signs and fridge magnets with my bandsaw, and I've been using my sanding machine to do the edges. And here's some samples of what I've been doing. So here's the Maker's Central ones, and they have come out so well. They look amazing. Here's the one of my logo, and this is the one that's got the sort of 3D effect, where the acetate's just sitting off the base. You just see the you can just see the 3D effect there, I think. There's the big Maker's Central one. And that looks really lovely. I shall give that to my friend Nick Zammit and see if we can do something with it for Maker's Central. Sure, we can use it somewhere. There we are. While I'm on the subject, 5th and 6th of May, the NEC Birmingham UK Maker's Central. Make sure you get your tickets, because it is going to be an awesome event. And another big one of my logo, came out very well. Very pleased with that. The little fridge magnets. I'm very pleased with as well. They came out amazingly well. One thing I forgot to mention is the edges of this. At the minute these are raw as they've come off the sanding machine, but as you can see they look quite cool. You know, that looks quite good like that. But you could polish the edge of the resin. You could use some very fine wet and dry and polish that up. But I think what I will probably do is just varnish the edges with some more epoxy resin next time I mix some up. I'll actually just run a layer of varnish around the edges of those, which will seal them. And I should think will bring up the edge of the existing epoxy like glass. Anyway, we'll have an experiment with that. Very pleased with that. Great experiment. First time I've used that resin, and it is fantastic. Now that resin was sent to me by Steve at MBFG in Belfast, MB Fiberglass in Belfast. And anyone who's seen any of my other videos, any of my videos where I've done any mould making or casting, all the materials I use for that generally comes from MBFG. They're a brilliant company. I've used them for years, long before I had a YouTube channel, and I really love their stuff. Really good. So I was delighted when they sent me this resin to try. Really easy to use. I couldn't believe how easy it was. No bubbles in it, except where I trapped a couple, but sets like glass. You know, The finish on it is incredible. It degasses itself really well. No need for pressure pots or anything like that. And the other thing I noted when I was cutting them out, I actually marked circles on these, scratched circles using dividers, and it's quite scratch resistant. You know, I think you'd have to be careful which applications you used it for, and there's plenty of advice on their website with that. But it's really, you know, set my cogs whirring. I've got loads of ideas I could use with resin like this. And in fact, my next project, I think, if it works, it's a bit of an experiment, we'll be using this resin. But we'll wait and see. But yeah, very pleased with that, and thank you very much, Steve, for sending me that. And I've really enjoyed using it. Anyway, I shall be back soon with another video, hopefully. It really is very experimental, so I just hope it works. One last point. I got an email off YouTube today congratulating me on 10,000 subscribers, and they sent a little graphic, a GIF of 10,000 subscribers, which I might try and slot into this video somewhere. But thank you very much to all my subscribers. I actually turned 10,000 a couple of months ago, I think it was, when I wasn't actually putting any videos up at the time, and I think it went over 10,000. It's nearly 11 now. But getting the email off YouTube reminded me, and I'd just like to thank everyone who has supported me, and you know, over the years that I've had my channel, and I really appreciate it. You know, it's fantastic. You know, 10,000 is such an achievement. When I started my YouTube channel, it really wasn't about getting subscriber numbers and things like that, but it's just been wonderful, the response, so thank you very much. So if you like my stuff, please like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back soon with some more videos. Thanks again for watching, folks. Back again soon with some more experimenting and videos. I know there was a bit of messing about in this one where I got things wrong, but I thought you'd like to see the mistakes as well as the successes. The next video is also an experimental video, but it will involve some wood turning this time. And don't forget to get your Makers Central tickets.
More videos coming soon.